Hey y'all! In this video we're going to take another step into 3D modeling in VCarve and Aspire. I am using the Aspire 9.5 software. However, everything I'm going to show you in this video can be done on VCarve Desktop and VCarve Pro. What I'm going to attempt to do is try to introduce the concept of composite modeling. We have all seen very complex 3D models and 3D renders that have been done in Aspire, and at first glance they look extremely intricate, extremely complex. This is not very complex, but it could look daunting to the absolute beginner. I've started over here in the Preview Toolpaths window to give you an idea of what we're hoping to accomplish here and what I'm attempting to show you as far as composite models are concerned. Now, this is not going to be a how-to create this particular model. I'm using this model as an example to introduce the concept of composite models. Now, when you look at a model like this, or for instance a military insignia or a police badge or a firefighter's badge, we look at it in total. We don't tend to look at each individual component like these rope borders here, or this dome, or this flourish. We look at the entire model. The concept of composite models helps us to break down this entire plaque into its individual components to see how they're set up, how they're laid out, and how they interact one another to come up with this design. Let me go ahead and close my preview, go for a straight Z view. I'll switch back over to my drawing tab, and just so we can see what's going on, I'm going to vertically tile my 2D view and my 3D view using this icon right here. Now, looking at my 3D view, we can start to see that some of the elements are missing. This section in here is missing because this is not a 3D model. This is a simple pocket and VCarve, some text. So it won't appear in our 3D view. I'm going to go over here to my modeling tab, and this is where we're going to spend a lot of time. And I'm going to show you how these components interact with one another. When we click on the modeling tab, we see all these tools up here. But the important part to focus on today is right down here. This is the component tree. Now, the component tree, in this case, I have one level, and each of these four components is on this one specific level. Now, the way to think of levels when we're working in 3D is to think of them as similar to layers in 2D. I have only one level at this time, and that is this one here. But it's made up of these four different components. I got these components over here in the Clipart library. So I'll click on the Clipart tab. I've selected Clipart, and if we look in the component tree, we can see I have two identical rope borders, a flourish, and a dome, a 30-degree dome. Go back over into Clipart, and the dome is this one here. The two borders are this one here. The only difference being this one was scaled down to be smaller in size. This one was scaled up to be larger in size. And the difficult one to find is a flourish over here. this flourish right here. That is this flourish in the center. Each one of these separate components, let me go back to the modeling tab. Each one of these separate components is a 3D model of its own. But when they are combined onto this level and set to interact with one another in a certain manner, that gives us our composite model. It's a composite of all four of these individual models that give us the final 3D model. So when we look at a complex design and we think, man, that's way above my skill set, that's way more complicated than I could ever come up with, what we need to do is kind of train ourselves to look beyond the whole and start looking at individual elements, individual components within the component tree, and kind of reverse engineer, take it apart mentally, and see what each component is and how they interact with one another. We're going to get into that interaction a lot deeper in subsequent videos, but just to give a brief overview, you'll see I have these four components. Two of them are identical, and those are these rope borders here. The flourish sitting up on top, and then the dish down below. They're in this order for a reason. The way the component tree works, no matter how many levels you have here, the software will start from the bottom and work its way up. So the bottom element is considered the base, then the next element is added to that or merged with it, then the third element, then the fourth element. In this case, these two borders, this border doesn't really interact with anything other than the modeling plane. This border interacts with the modeling plane as well as this dish. Now you'll notice a slight difference in the icon right here. This icon is your combine mode. That is the way this dish combines with the modeling plane and any other models that it interacts with. If I put my mouse over the Dome Dish 30 name, we see it says Combine Mode Merge. What that means is this dome is merging with the modeling plane and with any other model that it touches. The flourish, you notice the icon is slightly different. If we hover our mouse over the name, we see the combine mode is Add. The Add combine mode means this flourish will sit on top of that dome. And if I zoom in here and kind of rock it back a little bit, we can see that. That flourish sits on top of this dome, and there is a definite outline here. It's not blending, it's not merging. It's sitting on top of this dome. The thing to remember about these icons here, and we'll get further into them as time passes, is look at the shape of this U pointing upwards, and an upside down U means it's in an additive mode, meaning that this dome is being added to the modeling plane. This projects up from the modeling plane. The flourish is added on top of this dome. It projects up from the top of that dome. Now, I can change this combine mode, and I'll do it here just to demonstrate, but this is not the focus of this video. Select that component, and right-clicking my mouse, going to the first item that comes up in the context menu here, which is combine mode, and I'll change it to subtract. Three things happen actually. This icon changes to the correct side up U. I don't know if you noticed or not, but the colors here in the 2D view of the model inverted. These dark gray and black areas were once white, and these white areas here were once black. Then over here in the 3D view, we can see that that flourish is actually being carved into the top of that dome so that it's recessed. Now that is not the look I'm going for. I want it to project up from that dome. So I will come back over here with it selected, and we see our combine mode is now subtract. We'll right click, combine mode, add. We see that our colors here on the 2D view inverted again. What was black is now white, and what was white is now black. And my model is now projecting upward off of that dome. As I said, we will get further into that, but in a nutshell, that's what these icons mean. That's your combine mode. How this particular component is going to combine with other components that make up the bulk of the model. As I just showed, there are several ways of selecting each individual component once they're placed. Here in the component tree, I can click on the title of the component, and we see it's selected here, and it's selected here as indicated in this darker brown color. I'll click off to deselect. If I'm in the Drawing tab for some reason and I want to select a component, say this flourish, I'll just click on the flourish. It selects here in the 2D view. It also selects in the 3D view. I'll click off to deselect. If I'm working in the 3D view and I want to select this flourish, for example, I'll double click. If I just, let me click off here. If I just single click, it doesn't do anything in the 3D view. It will in the 2D view. But in the 3D view, you have to double click that component to select it. So those are the three main ways of selecting a component. Double click in the 3D view, click in the 2D view, or here in the component tree, click on the title. Now, as I alluded to before, these are all set up in an order within the level. They're in a specific order on purpose. The software models from the bottom to the top. So starting here on this level, it will start with the dome first, which is set to merge with the modeling plane. Then it will add the flourish on top of that dome. The first rope border, which is this one here inside, is set to merge with the dish or the dome as well as the modeling plane. Then this outside rope border is also set to merge with the modeling plane. Let's go back to this rope border for just a second. It is set to merge with the modeling plane and the dish because it's positioned above the dish. If we zoom in here, I'll scoot it over some, kind of rock it back a little bit, we can see here that it merges in with the modeling plane, so there is not a stark straight up and down border here. It also merges with this dish because the dish actually technically starts out about here. With this merging with it, the dish would increase in elevation as it came up towards the center. If this was just simply set to add, I would see the profile of this rope border and the diameter of my bit as it carved in to create this border down equal with the modeling plane, at the same level as the modeling plane. But by setting this rope border to merge with the modeling plane as well as the dish, now the software knows to cut this part of the rope and stop when it gets down to the surface of the dish, and not cut any deeper to finish cutting this detail. That's the difference between merge and add. So let me go back out to a straight Z view here, and I'll switch back over to my preview window, and we'll maximize that preview window. Here in the model itself, we can see that I have a definite hard edge right here on this border, where this rope border meets this area here that I've pocketed out and V-carved, but it's got a slightly gentler border right here where it meets this dish. And that's the effect I was looking for. I want a gentle blend here. I don't want a hard, stark, straight up and down angle. The basic idea, however, to take away from this is that when we look at what first appears to be a complex model like this, is to mentally take it apart in our head and separate. This is a rope border, this is a rope border, this is a dome, this is a flourish. This must have been pocketed out here, and then that's a simple V-carve. And if you look over here at my toolpath list, you'll see that's exactly what it is. I'll go ahead and reset the preview, show you what I have here, and I'll tile my 2D and 3D view so you can see what's happening. I did, first of all, a 3D roughing toolpath using a 1/4 inch end mill. And that roughing toolpath roughed out all of the 3D areas, leaving a skin behind for the 3D finishing toolpath to carve. We'll preview that toolpath, and you can see here what that did and what that looks like. It roughed out the edge of that rope border inside and out, and it left this big ridge here standing where I want this V carving. I then selected, for the pocket toolpath, I selected a vector to the outside of this rope border and to the inside of this rope border, and I calculated a pocketing toolpath that brought it down to the same level as this right in here. We'll preview that toolpath, and there we go. I then calculated a 3D finishing toolpath that would finish the entire model. We'll go ahead and preview that toolpath. Then I calculated a simple V-carve toolpath for my text. We'll preview that. Then for my final toolpath, I took an outside vector out here, and that's my profile cutout. Preview that. Double click the waste to get rid of it. And that's my finished project. We see it's a collection of toolpaths in order that are going to create this composite model. Back over here in the modeling tab in the component tree, we see each one of those individual components are set to interact with one another in a certain way, and that's what gives us our 3D model out here. Now, I hope I didn't just confuse you. I hope I kind of cleared a few things up. Basically, what it is remembering that this is not a single model. This is not one huge element that somebody drew out. This is a composite of individual components all set to interact with one another in specific ways using 3D components as well as 2D components. So I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to follow along with this series or some of my other CNC adventures, I do hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Now, in the end screen that's going to come up here in a few seconds, I'm putting a link up here in the top left to this series, the 3D Carving for the Absolute Beginner. And down below that on the bottom left, I'll put a link to the playlist for the entire CNC for the Absolute Beginner series. Again, I hope you got something out of this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And do know that there will be more videos coming on this subject. I will be getting into the modeling tab and will be working with the tools both in VCarve and Aspire. So there is more to come. As usual, whether you subscribe to my channel or not, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch, and y'all take care.